Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Mud Hub. Have to say thank you so much for the comments and the direct messages that have been coming in over the last few days with all of your questions. It's been really great to see people say, oh, and what about this and what about that and how do you do this, and just trying to figure out their way around creative life and freelance life. Yeah, I'm glad these are providing some sort of insight into maybe what you could do or making you feel better about having to have a massive office job on the side of doing your creative things, and about how you can hustle your way into being more creative than you are corporate. So let's answer some more questions. Heather on Twitter asked, when do I write and if I have a schedule? Oh, what a question. I don't have a schedule, and I think that might be one of my biggest downfalls actually. When you speak to poets who are, releasing their second or third even publications, they're always talking about get up in the morning really, really early, maybe like 4 or 5, and they use that time when no one's interrupting them to write, and they do it religiously every day. Or you hear of other poets who say, right, I'm going to set myself a goal, I'm going to write 1,000 poems in a year. A lot of other people have these goals or specific times of day that they write to, but I do not. I wish I did, and I'm hoping to get more disciplined. I write as something captures my attention, so maybe there's a new bird that I haven't noticed before that's on the wall in the garden and it sparks an image. I remember recently I was at a friend's house and I saw a little brown bird on a branch outside her window, and I noticed the way the rain was bouncing off of it like it had a little rain mac on, and that's an image that's really stuck with me, but haven't managed to write about it yet. The good thing about writing kind of as inspiration takes you, I find, is that all of your poems are quite different and can be about really varying subjects, and most of the time very present. The bad thing is, if like me, you're a bit of a slave to your emotions and a slave to your moods, it can mean that you go weeks, even months, without really writing anything. That's definitely something I struggle with in general as a person. Sometimes I can clean my room every single week. Sometimes I won't clean my room for 8 weeks. Yeah, I think getting some discipline in would help all of us to write more regularly. And one of my poetry mentors, Roger Robinson, has been stressing to me recently that if you write every day, it's like going to the gym every day. It's that muscle that you're training up. You should do it, basically. If anybody wants to set a challenge and do it with me, let's try it. I'm not saying I will be amazing at commitment, but let's try it. It's definitely hard as well, I think, to stick to a schedule if, like myself, you've got 3 jobs going on, or however many jobs going on. Like, I try my best to run Mud Press and get us new stockists and get us out there a bit more and do the admin with that, as well as working for my initial freelance learning design company. I've now taken on a bit of work for a different e-learning company, and I've also got my responsibilities as the Poet Laureate, which is teaching full days, half days, evenings. It's performing at gigs, it's writing to commissions, blog deadlines, all sorts of stuff. So my life is quite chaotic, as I'm sure most of your guys is. So yeah, finding some sort of schedule for anything to stick to in that is difficult. I barely eat healthy dinners of an evening because it's just so mad. There's always something to do. So I think discipline and personal well-being are actually quite intertwined. Back to Twitter, Vix has asked, do you find that most of your work comes through connections you've already made or through speculative inquiries? If the former, how do you go about getting those connections in the first place? If the latter, how do you get found? Well, before I was the Poet Laureate, I was still doing gigs and writing to commission, and I think that the work that I got then was through people seeing me perform in Nottingham at open mic nights and getting booked for gigs. So my advice to you, if you're getting work cold, if you will, is if you're a poet, get out on the stages, gig and show up to gigs, you know, make friends with people, support people on the scene. Yeah, I think the only way that work will ever come to you is if you're putting yourself out there by attending things, reading at things, and, you know, sharing your knowledge and your experiences with other people. Now that I'm Poet Laureate, a lot of my work comes to me through Nottingham City of Lit, because they kind of canvassed for a bank of work for whoever the Poet Laureate is, so that when they start their laureateship they have work to get into. So I've done 5 residencies with organisations such as the Wildlife Trust, Genogly Academy, City Art, Lakeside Art, places like that. And again, off the back of getting those contracts and working with people, that's how I'm then getting more work and more commissions and getting booked for different things. So yeah, I would say in the world of being freelance, if you are a freelance writer or a freelance poet, the only thing you can do is say yes to everything that comes your way. Just say yes, try and fit it in, you know, write of an evening if you have to, get up early in the morning if you have to, eat lunch in the car or on the bus if you have to, just do it. So for me now, Vix, to answer your question in summary, I would say it's a mix of both, but I think most of my work comes from having already met people and just having been out there. Somebody called PC on Twitter has asked, how do you pay your rent/bills? Well, I kind of touch on that in episodes 1 and 2, but just to recap, I also have a freelance job as a learning designer, which means that I script online solutions for companies who want to train their staff on things like health and safety, anti-bribery. Very, very corporate, but it means that I get a better understanding of user experience and how you guide a person through the stages of understanding, which then does feed into my poetry a little bit, especially with spoken word, you know. It's very immediate, so you want to make sure that you're not being too abstract. So the two do feed in. But yes, primarily I pay my rent through the corporate work that I do. However, saying that, I have managed to save up enough money from my poetry work, because you get paid for commissions, you get paid to teach at workshops. Eventually you start getting paid to appear at gigs. So with that money, I've kind of been putting it to the side, and now I have enough to get rid of one of my credit cards. And that takes me neatly into the next question. Emily on Twitter has asked what fees you charge for what as a poet. Yes, that is such a scary question, and in the poetry world people argue about this all the time, and it really does depend on what job it is and what the person wants and needs. But for poetry, if I was going to do a commissioned poem for an organisation, I would charge between £100 and £150. If I were to do half a day's workshop, so let's say 9 till 12, 9 till 1, something like that, I'd probably be looking at charging about £300, which feels crazy at first, I know, but you've got to think about how much prep you have to do before you get there. So all of the lesson planning you've got to do, you've got to think about your travel there and back and the time itself. But there are other poets who would say that's not enough, you need to be charging more, you're undercutting the market. I think build up. It's realistic that if you're new to the game and you're trying to get out there, that you're not charging an arm and a leg, but you have to have a conversation with yourself about self-worth and the time and energy and effort it's going to take. In comparison to my freelance, I would be charging a lot more for a daily rate. So what is paid for one poem over 3 days, I would have probably got 3 times over that period, if that makes sense. Don't want to disclose any fees in case I'm not allowed to with any of the corporate people, but you get what I'm saying. Again, another question that's been asked on Facebook by Charlotte is about generating stable income, and is it hard? Yes, it's hard. If you're going to go freelance, if you're going to try and get away from your corporate jobs or your retail jobs, your waitressing jobs, make sure that you've got some savings. So they say that you should have at least 2 months rent, bills and living costs in your bank. So it's different for every person. I was lucky when I decided to go freelance. I joined a company that signed a contract with me and said, we will use you for X amount of months at a time. I kind of jumped into something that was okay. You don't have to do it that way. A lot of people start building their client base and emailing people and saying, oh hi, I'm going to be free come October. Does your organisation or school need some poetry workshops? This is what I can offer, blah blah blah. Yeah, a lot of the time people don't get back to you, but you've got to put yourself out there and you've got to try. So yes, my advice is to get the work, to get the income, get out there and gig and set yourself a a schedule. Not that I do, but I'm trying to make sure that you write more so that you have content to keep gigging, and yeah, just get your hustle on. Monetize where you can in the corporate world or in the retail world or whatever. All of us have got our side jobs. I met Carol Ann Duffy, the Poet Laureate of like Britain, instated by the Queen, the other week, and she said even she has to teach universities or schools or wherever she teaches to supplement her life as being a poet. So you always got to do something to account for the downtime where you want to be writing and learning. I hope that was helpful for you guys, and as always, please comment on this video with any more questions, or on Twitter or Instagram or wherever you can find me, and I will do my best to answer them in episode 4. See you then.